Hello, everyone. So today in Art 2, we started to talk about surrealism. We're going to kind of lead into a pen and ink project, which is super exciting. But for now, we're going to look at some really kind of interesting art. Everyone today thought it was really interesting. Um, so I have kind of a short PowerPoint to go over. Cool. Oh, my slides are going super fast. So surrealism is art in which dreams, fantasy, and the subconscious serve as inspiration for artists. So this was kind of a movement in the early 20th century where artists were becoming more aware of the effect that like their dreams or their subconscious could have on their artwork. And by subconscious, that basically means like the part of your brain that isn't kind of in the forefront of your thoughts. Um, these artists are kind of tapping into like odd dreamscapes, or they're thinking of ways of creating automatically, which is called automatism. Um, so these artists would do strange things like just pour sand on a canvas and make a landscape out of it and then paint around that. But we can talk a little bit more about the other stuff in depth later. But today, we are going to just focus on surrealism. And surrealism is really interesting. In class, we asked the question, do you know of any surrealist artists? A couple people said Frida Kahlo, which is very, very true. She is an artist that is known for working in surrealism. You may know Dali, who's a very famous surrealist artist. If you don't know these people's faces, you've probably seen their artwork before. Surrealism back in the day, so like when it was being made in the early 1900s, it was kind of like it was weird. It was something that, it was like an art form that people didn't really know a whole bunch about and they thought was really weird and strange and out there. But today, we actually see surrealism in a lot of places, especially in mass media. There are, like you've probably seen like movie posters. These people's artwork kind of gets reprinted, and it's a little bit more normal for us now to look at. But back at that time, it was super outlandish and strange, and a little bit uncanny. So this art movement came about like right around or after World War II. Maybe it was, yeah. So these artists were kind of dealing with a political landscape that was really confusing, and they were kind of, trying to reason with that and trying to fight against what was happening in their realities. So they decided to kind of manipulate their dreams and make their dreams artwork in a really weird way. Cool. Okay, I'll show you some examples. So this is Magritte. This is the last guy on the right over here. So here we can see that this artwork is kind of strange because, it's like this huge eyeball, and inside of the eyeball is a cloud. So you can almost make the assumption that inside of this, somebody's, like this human eye is a whole other world, right? And I think that's kind of a good translation into surrealism, because these artists are talking about our subconscious and the things in our head that are like, that we don't bring to the forefront but are a little bit strange. Maybe some of our deepest thoughts. Here's another one by Magritte. This is a really good example when we start to talk more about pen and ink, of using surrealism in pen and ink. And then you have probably seen this artwork if you have seen any of these. This is Dali, and you can see this is kind of like a weird landscape, and all of these melted clocks are everywhere, and there's like a strange animal in the middle that's sleeping or laying down. And over here it's like the ocean, but it looks kind of like a swimming pool. So One thing about surrealism is that these landscapes can seem very like realistic, like things that we would actually see occurring in, real life. But there are things that are like slightly off. So these these melted clocks, they're kind of like, we see clocks every day, but they're melted, so it's a little bit strange. Um, a good way to kind of explain the feeling of surrealism, I think, is to think about like something you can't quite place your finger on. Surrealism for some people seems to be like looking at it kind of gives you that feeling of like something being a little bit off or strange. Here's another one by Dolly. So this one's depicting like an actual dreamscape. And you can see all these stilts are kind of holding this person's head up and they're sleeping. And it looks a little bit uncomfortable, but also comfortable at the same time. Two other artists are Oppenheim and Frida Kahlo. And you have likely heard of Frida Kahlo. You've probably seen some of Oppenheim's work. She created this really cool saucer and cup out of feathers. This came out of her having a conversation with Picasso, actually, at a cafe. I heard this story in a documentary very secondhand, so I hope my information is true. But so this artist was kind of thinking about things that you could cover in fur to make them strange. Because I think at the time the story was that she was wearing this bracelet, and Picasso was like, "Oh, you can cover anything in fur." And they were drinking coffee, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna cover a teacup in fur." But it kind of gets a really strange reaction out of you because you're thinking about like, what do you do with a cup? You drink out of it, and you eat out of a spoon. And having this material on it that's like so out of place is really strange, and it makes the whole situation feel a little bit off. Also, kind of gross, maybe. I would not want to drink coffee out of one of those saucers. Here's another example of her work. So this is obviously like kind of looks like a turkey, but it's someone's shoes. Maybe you would eat like turkey at Thanksgiving dinner, and it would have these fancy things on them. I don't know who does that anymore. I don't do that, but yeah. So just kind of a strange situation for those shoes to be in. If you're into sculpture, instead of a lot of the examples we're looking at are paintings, but this artist has a lot of sculptural works in surrealism. So if you are into more three-dimensional sculptural work, she would be a really cool source to look at. And then we have Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo, if you know anything about her personal life, she was actually bedridden for most of her life. So a lot of her artworks have to do with the dreams that she was having and like the experience that she felt kind of like living, maybe like trapped in her body where she couldn't get out and like move around a whole lot. So this is a good example of kind of like a strange dreamscape that she may have had. Looks like there's hair everywhere, like maybe she's cut all of her hair off. She's got scissors in her hand. Everything in this is kind of, normal. Like it's just a person in a suit sitting on a chair with hair everywhere, but there's something a little bit off about it. It kind of gives us like an eerie kind of feeling to look at it. Here's another one by Frida Kahlo. We had a pretty heated discussion about this one in class. But it's odd because, her heart is like out and bare, and she's got these scissors in her hand, and there are two of her. So we can kind of, I think, infer that there's something connecting her to this other person. Like maybe she's referencing herself and how she feels. And this vein is kind of like leading over to this other person and helping it live, but it's bleeding. Yeah, so just a little bit strange. Something maybe you would see in a dream. Awesome. And then we answered these questions in class. And this is a fun video to watch. You can watch it on your own. Just go to the PowerPoint on Google Classroom. So the exercise that we did today after we watched the video was a surrealism collage. this is basically like a chance for you to kind of make something surreal and strange with media that already exists. So you could take apart different, like, you could take apart photographs that people have already taken, um, and insert things into them and just make the whole situation look wild. So the first thing you'll want to do is kind of think of your inspiration, think of your plan. This may come about like while you're looking through the magazine. I know a couple students like found some clippings and then it kind of gave them inspiration for what they wanted to do. So that's totally fine. I think I forgot to have a PowerPoint with some examples somewhere in here. Let's see. There we go. So here are some examples that some other people did, and these are pretty fun. You can see that if it'll load. So this person took this photograph of the city, and they cut out all of these pictures of these kids riding turtles. I don't know if the kids were riding turtles in the original photos, but so they went over really, and they cut these like really close, so that when you put it on the other magazine sheet, it looks like the people are actually in this space. Here's another funny one. It's like a kid hanging off the earth. And then this is kind of like a strange, surreal landscape. You could recreate a portrait of someone. This one's kind of funny. You probably want to be a little more involved in this, but this is a good starting point. Blowing bubbles, but they're in space. Awesome. So this is also attached in our classroom, so you can review this if you like. I I will attach it. So after you finish your collage, you'll upload a picture and also fill out this response. So make sure you talk about, I think it's just these 3 questions. Answer those 3 questions and submit your collage. If you don't have access to a magazine or scissors or glue at home, email me and we will figure out an alternative project for you to do. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about it, or any observations, and I will answer your emails as quickly as possible. And if you haven't added our Remind 101 yet, you should totally do that, because it's been really great to be able to communicate with you guys like on the weekends and stuff through Remind 101 when you have a quick question. And that should be on our stream, not too far down. All right, so this is for, so if you're in 6th hour, this is going to be your Remind 101 code. And if you are in 1st hour, this is your 1st hour Remind 101 code. So please be sure to add that.